This week, we take a deeper look at those so often forgotten soldiers. Native Americans and African Americans have been strong participants in this conflict, but leaders on both sides question their abilities. This week, there is no doubt. No matter their color, creed, or culture, Americans can fight. First thing this week, we head to Indian Territory for the Battle of Honey Springs. The land of Indian Territory in the Civil War has been complex, which itself is an understatement. The 5 civilized tribes, Cherokee, Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole, sided with the Confederacy at the start of the war due to numerous reasons. Though these groups are not homogeneous, and many members prefer the Union. In December 1861, those Unionists were driven from the territory in the Battle of Chustenhala. There's no way I'm pronouncing it right. While the eyes of the nation have looked elsewhere, the territory is important, and Major General James G. Blunt and his Army of the Frontier have decided to reclaim the land for the Union. He spent the summer of 1863 waging a fishing campaign against the rebels residing in the north of the territory and winning the support of the Cherokee, pushing his opponent, Brigadier General Douglas H. Cooper and his District of Indian Territory, all the way to Fort Smith. The accomplishment on paper seems to be miraculous. The Army of the Frontier numbering only 3,000 men against the men under Cooper, which numbers 6,000. But in reality, the Confederates in the West have been suffering from massive discipline and supply problems. Even before the fall of Vicksburg and the Union taking the Mississippi River, unable to effectively support Cooper. His army is without good ammunition, their powder being of poor quality, to say nothing of their arms. Most soldiers nowadays are equipped with rifles, either Springfield or Enfield, but Cooper's men have muskets and shotguns, not what is effective in war. Cooper needs to take Union supplies if he wants to keep his army, which is why he's at Honey Springs, one of his last supply depots. But Honey Springs means more than just that. It also threatens Fort Gibson, where the Union is controlling the northern part of the Arkansas River, and it sits on the Texas Road, a major transportation artery west of the Mississippi. Its fall could be the first domino in the fall of all those states. By the 17th, General Blunt has arrived at Honey Springs. He has pushed back enemy pickets and brought his line to bear. It is made up of 2 brigades and 12 cannons. Blunt sees the enemy, who also have 2 brigades, but they're much bigger than his. One is made up of 3 regiments of Texas cavalry, the other is completely made up of Indian regiments. The rebels open the battle with artillery fire, aimed at knocking out Blunt's guns. They take out 1 Napoleon, but soon the Union's artillery responds, knocking out one of Cooper's howitzers. Artillery continues their duel, but battles aren't won by cannons, but by infantry and cavalry. Blunt has his horsemen, the 3rd Wisconsin Cavalry and 6th Kansas Cavalry, dismount and form up in line with his infantry. The 1st and 2nd Indian Home Guard, the 1st Kansas Colored Infantry, and the 2nd Colorado Infantry. We will use to push the secessionists from the field. The advances in formation, brilliantly firing concentrated volleys into the rebel line, who, despite the terrifying display of firepower, stands firm and even tries to flank the Union, where we would repulse the disorderly attempt. Fighting is confusing, with lines overlapping and melees happening in complete confusion. But after 2 hours of trying battle, the rebels stand strong. They're winning strongly. Blunt needs a change of plan. He orders Colonel James M. Williams to take his 1st Kansas Colored Regiment and seize the rebels' 4 battery positions. Williams tells his men that no quarter will be given if captured. Remember their brothers enslaved. Look into the eyes of the traitors. They fix bayonets and charge, firing at close range at those Texas cavalry, who support Cooper's cannons. 2nd Indian Home Guard moves between the Kansas Regiment and the Texans, who they engage with before they're ordered to fall back. Rebels believe the enemy are retreating. They charge in, but suffer a volley from the 1st Kansas, which kills their color bearer. Rebels rush to raise their regimental banner, but shot down again and again. The Indians run in and capture the Texan banner. The 1st Kansas, which did the fighting, is angry about this, but the lieutenant colonel tells them it will be righted after the battle. Just win it. Cooper sees his line falling apart. He orders his men to fall back, and they have the artillery withdraw. The District of Indian Territory has a spirited rear guard, but are pushed from a bridge where they meet up with reinforcements numbering 4,000 under Brigadier General Cable. Blunt decides not to pursue, instead having his men plunder the rebel supplies, which gives them generous amounts of food. I'll let the Oklahoma Historical Society wrap it up. Cooper reported his losses at 134 killed and wounded, with 47 taken prisoner. Maintained the federal killed and wounded exceeded 200. Blunt reported his losses as 17 killed and 60 wounded. He said he buried 150 Confederates, wounded 400 of their men, and took 77 prisoners. The exact numbers will never be known. Cooper afterwards sent a letter of appreciation to Blunt for his burial of the Confederate dead. Next, we move to South Carolina and their great city of Charleston, where this entire war began, and is the heart of the rebellion. The fall of the city that started this whole conflict would be a great victory for the Union, and possibly the beginning of the end, but more immediately, great headlines and great publicity for the general that takes it. Well, I even work after Gettysburg. No one's watching. Oh, God. The general that could take it would be General Quincy A. Gilmore in his 10th Corps. General Gilmore is an accomplished man, having graduated first in his class at West Point. But he hasn't had much luck with the papers. While he's a Corps commander, he isn't that important. But all that can change if he takes Charleston. Now I know why they have rules about drinking on the job. Though that's easier said than done. He had already tried by assaulting the very important fortification, Fort Wagner, but was bloodily repulsed. The enemy holding the fortress is Brigadier General William B. Taliaferro, a man who commanded the Stonewall Brigade and Division. He has 1,800 South Carolina men to hold the position. Gilmore still wants to take the fort and plans for Brigadier General Truman Seymour to assault with his division, having Brigadier General George C. Strong lead the assault with his brigade, Colonel Putnam to follow up with his brigade, and the reserve brigade of Brigadier General Thomas Stevenson to exploit the victory. That's approximately 5,000 men. But they aren't alone. 6 naval vessels will support the assault and hopefully claim Morris Island and have their first part of Charleston Harbor. Though the question goes out, who will lead the assault? For some, the idea of leading the charge would be harrowing, and some have claimed erroneously that any regiment charged with being the lead one was insulted. But in reality, it is a great honor. Colonel Robert G. Shaw speaks for his 54th Massachusetts, agreeing to be the head regiment. His men are tired and hungry, and pretty new compared to most regiments, having only left Boston 2 months ago. But the good colonel believes his men have the spirit required for the daunting task. The guns have been bombarding Wagner for hours, supposedly weakening the enemy's position. As it reaches nightfall, General Strong and Colonel Shaw speak to the 54th. Strong says, "I am sorry you must go into the fight tired and hungry, but the men in the fort are tired too. Don't fire a musket on the way up, but go in and bayonet them at the guns." Strong asks who will pick up the colors if they are to fall, and Colonel Shaw says he will. He then speaks to his men, reminding them of the glory of their cause and flag, and says, "Now I want you to prove yourselves, men." He asks who will follow him into Fort Wagner, and all the men of the regiment step forward. He walks his ranks before yelling, "Attention!" Moving quick time until within 100 yards of the fort. Then double quick and charge. His men begin the rhythmic march towards destiny and their double rank formation, ready to deliver a 1-2 punch. As the sun begins to set, the 54th can see their target so clearly, Colonel Shaw orders, "Forward!"
If this man should fall, who will lift the flag and carry on? See you in the fort, Thomas. Fix! Bayonets! Shoulder! Hard! Charge! Bayonets! And the quick step!
Yeah, look, I know Glory has its problems like the ocean's on the wrong side, but it's still a great film. The men cheer for their blow of freedom as they turn to the charge. They leave their footsteps in the sand, ready to be washed away by the tide as they move forward towards the parapets and their destiny. The Union guns continue their bombardment, but soon the 31st, 51st, and 61st North Carolina Infantry open fire, aided by South Carolina cannons. The 54th is in a killing zone of both their own artillery and the enemy's. Their color bearer goes down, but to ensure that the flag never touches the earth, it is picked up and charged forward. Facing volleys and being unable to return fire, their only hope is to get into Fort Wagner. Soon Confederate black hand grenades are thrown at the Union, who can't see them in the night, and these explosions blow apart companies and cause psychological havoc. But Shaw has to keep moving forward. He has to reach the enemy walls. He could fall back and return home to his wealth, wife, and upper-class life. But no, he's an American, and the men he leads are his brothers in arms. His regiment reaches a ditch before the enemy's parapet. They can wait here and have the two other brigades on the other side of the fort do the fighting, though they aren't completely safe, as rebel musketry picks off men, one being the regimental color bearer. The 54th rushed to within 20 yards of the ditches, and, as might be expected, the raw recruits wavered. For the second advance, they gained the parapet. But then Colonel Shaw seized the staff when the standard-bearer fell, and in less than a minute after, the colonel fell himself while waving his ornate England-made saber, shouting to his troops, "Come on, boys!" And when the men saw their gallant leader fall, they made a desperate effort to get him out. They were either shot down or reeled in the ditch below, while 22-year-old Sergeant William Harvey Kearney from New Bedford and a Company C Toussaint Guards member who now carried the bullet red nation colors after Color Sergeant John W. Wall, had already fallen with a wound, despite the fact that Kearney had been wounded and in 5 places before this night was over, but the color was completely torn to pieces. Parapet is 30 feet high, and Colonel Shaw was the first man to mount the high parapet. He died well, attempting to lead his men over the top, and neither ancient Greece nor Rome can excel his heroism. The 54th loved their colonel and charged in after him like demons yelling in the night. They charge the parapets and fight in brutal hand-to-hand combat, their state flag being ripped from its staff. Bodies fall by Colonel Shaw, but the Massachusetts men won't fall back, seeing their national colors still stand, desperately hoping for reinforcements. For hours they slash with their bayonets. As reinforcements start to trickle in, it is realized that it isn't enough. Despite this, the African-American soldiers won't retreat. They have been trusted with the national colors and advanced Enfield rifles. As long as they have weapons to fight and a nation to fight for, they will. Frantically, they fight for freedom and the honor of their colonel, but an order comes in from General Strong to withdraw, which is followed. In the end, the Union couldn't take Wagner, losing 246 killed, 880 wounded, and 389 missing. The rebels suffering only 36 killed, 133 wounded, and 5 missing. General Strong, Colonel Putnam, and Colonel Shaw lost their lives. The rebels buried the Union soldiers in a mass grave, with General Johnson Haggard returning the Union officers' bodies to the 10th Corps, except for Colonel Shaw. Had he been in command of lot troops, I should have given him an honorable burial. As it is, I shall bury him in the common trench with the that fell with him. Shaw's father retorts, "We would not have his body removed from where it lies, surrounded by his brave and devoted soldiers. We can imagine no holier place than in which he lies, among his brave and devoted followers, nor for him better company. What a bodyguard he has!" After the disaster at Fort Wagner, Charleston Harbor is put to siege. Major General Gilmore uses his 10th Corps to choke the rebel garrisons at Fort Wagner, Fort Sumter, and numerous positions around the populous South Carolina town. The 10th Corps is fitted with some impressive new technology. The 25-gun artillery piece, the Reka gun, can't pronounce anything right, and calcium floodlights, which can blind their opponents. They begin their zigzag trench approach of the enemy fortifications, but they only uncover their dead comrades, water, and disease. On the 19th, we turn to Union territory for the continuation of General Morgan's raid. Brigadier General John Hunt Morgan started his raid without orders, and its disjointed and impulsive nature has led to him being stuck in a terrible place. After multiple failures and one costly victory, he has been chased around Ohio, where he is now trying to escape. He has reached the Ohio River and a small hamlet of Portland near Buffington Island. He stopped on the 18th to wait daylight to make his crossing, which will be opposed by a great number of militia, or at least he thought. Unbeknownst to Morgan, his force of 1,900 aren't just going against state militia, also the Union's Navy and men of the Army of the Ohio, with multiple brigades from the 23rd Corps having converged on the Isle. Against Morgan's not even 2,000-man force is 3,000 federal soldiers. These Union soldiers charge in and quickly encircle the rebels. They're able to break apart the Confederate formations and swiftly end the battle in a victory. The Union lost 25 killed, 35 wounded, while Morgan suffered 52 killed, 100 wounded, and 750 captured. Morgan nearly escapes with 700 men, though his cavalry is near destruction. 4 days later, on the final day of the week, the final battle of the Gettysburg Campaign. Can Meade destroy Lee? No, this isn't a battle between the two armies, but instead the 3rd Corps, not under General Sickles, but General Franklin, he opposes random brigades of Lee's army. The battle started when Franklin, under orders from Meade, sends forward Brigadier General Francis Spinola and the Excelsior Brigade, which strikes a Georgian rebel brigade. After many hours of slow fighting, the Union takes the gap, but as Lee reinforces his now failing force, the Union decides to withdraw. In total, there were 440 casualties. Oh, thank God, a nice short week. Then there is Sickles. He has no more business in Washington, D.C. He leaves for New York, which is dangerous right after the riots. Not wishing to ignite the powder keg that is NYC, he decides to instead just keep supporting the war effort, which is a condemnation of the rioters just indirectly. Thank God it's an easy week. Then there is Sickles. He has no more business in Washington, D.C. He leaves for New York, which is dangerous right after the riots. Not wishing to ignite the powder keg that is NYC, he decides to instead just keep supporting the war effort, which is a condemnation of the rioters just indirectly. That's where the week ends, and it's a good thing that Honey Springs and Fort Wagner line up thematically. Since the beginning of the war, there have been questions of colored soldiers, and despite their victories at Fort Pulaski and Island Mound, the bravery of the 54th speaks volumes for their integrity, which does overshadow Honey Springs in the papers. Though General Blunt's victory in the West does speak highly of the also overlooked Native American soldiers, who are important to the ongoing Union success on my side of the Mississippi. The question now is, will the honorable sacrifice of the 54th be the opening of the floodgates to the wave of African Americans, or will the Liberty Bell be silenced again? Hello, it's the entire Civil Week by Week team here. I would just like to thank you all again, and specifically Kraut for giving me the shout out. It means a lot, buddy. The live stream for Gettysburg didn't go as well as planned, so I'm going to be trying it up again. Hopefully, you should see another episode out tomorrow, and the live stream should be happening tonight. Oh, also, like, comment, and subscribe. I just don't have time for anything anymore. I need to sleep.